In this video, I am going to talk about a potential problem that can arise when traversing an array of objects. So in this particular example, I have an array of my phone objects, 5 elements. I'm going to put 3 into the array, leaving the other 2 blank. So I have a 0 argument constructor, and these 2 were created using the 4 argument constructor. And then I'm simply going to traverse the array of called phone of my phones, and I'm going to call the getCost method. So it's going to return the price or the cost of the phone. Just to take a look at the phone class, there exists a getter called getCost, which returns the cost of the phone. So I'm just calling this method for each of the phones in the array. So it looks pretty straightforward. Just call the getCost method. So I'm going to close this and I'm going to compile. Compile is no problem. And let me run it. And when I run it, looks like I get a null pointer exception. So null meaning nothing, and I'm pointing to nothing. So I have a problem here. So it looks like I did print out 3 of the 5 elements, but I do have a problem here. I get a null pointer exception. So the problem lies in this. This for each loop or for loop is going to go through the array and attempt to call this method. And it successfully does it with these 3 phones. But when it gets to element 3 and 4, the last 2, there's nothing there. So I'm asking a non-existent thing, a null thing, to get the cost. And so Java doesn't know how to handle this. So typically what we do is we check to make sure if the element is null or not before we call the method. So we're going to check before we call. So I do something like if, let's see, phone is not equal to null. So if that particular element's not equal to null, then I will call the method. So it's not equal to null, call it. If it's null, then I won't attempt to call the getCost method because that evidently gets me a problem, and I'll just skip it. So let me compile this. So it's a simple if statement there. Close it, and let me run it. So when I run it, let's see what happens here. This is from the previous run. Let me clear it up for you here, and let me run it. And when I call it this time, I get the prices of the 3 phones. And the last 2, I never attempt to call the method because I check before I attempt to call the method. So that's a typical thing we do when we are calling methods of an object in an array, is to always check for its existence before we attempt to call the method. And we may even have an array that's full, but we may in the process delete an item or something like that, in which case we will have a blank or null object and we will get an error. So that's the way we can handle calling methods from a non-existent object. We can use an if statement to check for nullness before we call the method.